All right, guys, this is our lesson on adverbs. We'll go ahead and get started. Feel free to pause and rewind as necessary. The key thing to remember about adverbs is the fact that they modify three different things. So it can modify a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. And essentially what adverbs do is they clarify meaning. They make things more specific. They answer a couple different questions: how, when, where, and to what degree. An example of this would be, to what degree was the coffee hot? The coffee was very hot. So just an example, because that question sometimes is a little bit tricky. Feel free to scroll down to the next slide. I give you examples here. This is one where the adverb is modifying a verb phrase. The girl had yelled loudly at her brother. Loudly is our adverb, and it's modifying the verb phrase had yelled. Just a quick review. Had is our helping verb, and yelled is our action verb, and together they form a verb phrase. So as you can see, a lot of the lessons we had from semester 1 are going to start building with grammar lessons in semester 2. So for example, an adverb can also modify an adjective. So you need to be able to define or look for verb phrases and adjectives when you're seeking out adverbs. The example says, Joe was very anxious about his test. Very is our adverb. We have was as a linking verb, and whenever we have linking verbs, we have to look for adjectives that come after the linking verb. I'm going to switch colors so we don't get confused. Anxious is an adjective, and so very is explaining or clarifying how anxious he was in regards to his test. And then the last thing that you always have to look for is it modifying another adverb? The sample says, Coach Watson removed the ace wrap quite carefully. So we have quite modifying the other adverb carefully. How carefully? Quite carefully. And carefully is modifying the verb removed. How did they remove the wrap? Carefully. That is an ugly arrow. Let me try and do that again. Okay, so how did he remove the wrap? Carefully. How carefully? Quite carefully. So there's kind of a round of questions that you have to ask yourself as you're looking for adverbs. This chart gives a little bit more clarification. Adverbs add meaning to the verbs and the verb phrases by asking these questions, which we already went over. But I just want to give you an example of each. When are we going to fly? We're going to fly now. Where are we going to jump? We're going to jump aside. How will we speak? We will speak clearly. To what degree did you finish? I finished completely. So there just becomes a line of questioning that you have to ask yourself in your head as you do homework regarding adverbs. Hopefully this chart gives you a little bit of clarification. We also have adverbs that modify adjectives. And for when you're looking for it to modify an adjective, you ask the question, to what degree? How beautiful, very beautiful. To what degree Was the person beautiful? Very. How hungry? To what degree are you hungry? Rather hungry. And to what degree are you tired? I am unusually tired. Okay, so as you look at these, sometimes students confuse them and think that they are adjectives, when in reality, they're answering the question, to what degree, and that confirms that they are, in fact, adverbs. Last but not least, another example of adverbs that modify adverbs. Once again, answering the question, to what degree. Notice that for adverbs and adjectives, it's a simple question, whereas with the verb phrases, there's a couple more questions to ask. Walked quite slowly. So, for example, how did the person walk? So, walk is our verb. To what degree did they walk? Slowly. To what degree of slowness? Quite slowly. So if you were drawing arrows, I'll do it in a different color. Slowly is modifying walked, and quite is modifying slowly. Second one, always loses. We have our verb, loses, and the original one had always. To what degree do they lose? Always. To what degree is it always? Almost always. So then we have two adverbs. One adverb modifying the verb, and the other adverb modifying the other adverb. The last example says sings often. We have sings as our verb. Often is saying to what degree, how often, because it's modifying the verb. So if we go back up to this slide, the questions we can ask with verb phrases are when, where, how, to what degree. So sings when, sings often. So I know that this is an adverb modifying the verb. And sings often to what degree? And we have too often. And so the word to is modifying the adverb often. So we have, like I said, a line of questioning that's very important as you walk through finding adverbs. And note, the adverb that modifies the other adverb appears directly before. Okay, so in all three of these samples, it's right before the word that is modifying. Okay. Another area of adverbs is the category of negatives. Negatives include no, not, and then the contraction, because remember, couldn't really means could not. As we look at other negative words, we have nowhere, hardly, and never that are adverbs. They just show time, place, and degree. Okay, time, place, and degree. So for example, I could not remember where I set my sunglasses. This would be an adverb, and technically, could remember is my verb phrase. So the adverb not is modifying my verb phrase, could remember. This is somewhat tricky, so if you need clarification or you want to go over other samples, please let me know. There will be a couple of those in the homework. So what I'm going to do right now, this would be a place where you pause the video. And in each of these, you're going to look for an adverb that is modifying a verb, an adverb that's modifying an adjective. The fourth one has two, so an adverb modifying an adverb, and then an adverb modifying a verb. And then we'll go over this last one together because this one is another example of some of the trickier adverbs that they'll include in your homework. So take a second. I would identify the subject. I would identify the main verb. I would identify adjectives, and then I would go in and and find adverbs that are modifying. So take a minute, mark these sentences on your own, and then when you're ready, keep playing the video, and I will be going over the answers here. Don't look, try and do it on your own. See how accurate you can get. So in reviewing the adverb practice, we have our basset hound Bailey. This is our subject. Basset and hound are modifying Bailey. We have our verb sleeps, action verb. And sleeps to what degree? Sleeps how? And we have peacefully. So peacefully is modifying our verb sleeps. The second sentence says, Lenora rudely grabbed the last chocolate cookie. And remember, you were looking for an adverb that modifies the verb. So we have Lenora as our subject. We have grabbed as our action verb. And how did she grab? She rudely grabbed. And that is our adverb. The third one says an adverb modifying an adjective. So I know I have to find adjectives. So we have Tyler stumbled in the completely dark kitchen. We have Tyler as the subject. We have stumbled as our action verb. And we are looking for adjectives. So first, I know that kitchen is a noun. And so dark is modifying the noun because remember, adjectives can only modify nouns. And then I need to look for my adverb. How dark was it? To what extent was the kitchen dark? And we see that the answer is completely. So completely is modifying my adjective dark. The fourth sentence is looking for two. We have Roxanne as our subject. We have accepted as our action verb. Roxanne accepted the award how, or accepted the award to what extent? She happily accepted. This is my adverb that is modifying my verb phrase. So I'm going to box that in pink. And then I need to look for this one still, adverb modifying adverb. So how happily or to what extent was she happy? Okay, we have our adverb modifying the adverb. So whenever you find an adverb that is modifying the verb phrase, take a minute and double check and make sure that there is not also an adverb modifying the adverb that you found. This last one is a main clause. This is the main clause. The restroom stalls had toilet paper. That means that it can stand alone as a complete thought. And this adverb, surprisingly, is modifying the entire phrase. So the whole entire rest of the sentence is being modified by the word surprisingly. Okay. Go ahead and scroll down to the next slide. Most single word adverbs do end in ly. This is something that they teach you in elementary school. Of course, I give some examples here: peacefully, rudely, completely, surprisingly. But there's always exceptions to the rule. So for example, when you're a little kid in elementary, This is the simplest way to explain adverbs. But of course, as we get older and we learn that there are different parts of speech, that ly rule doesn't always apply. So for example, some adjectives end in ly. They answer the questions what kind or which one. So if you're not sure, ask these questions. If it answers it, it's most likely an adjective. Lively, lonely, and lovely are examples. So if I wrote lovely wedding cake, okay, lovely is modifying cake, and cake is a noun. What kind or which one was it? The lovely wedding cake. So just pay attention. Not all ly words are in fact adverbs, but the majority are. So just want to explain that rule because I know we're always taught that in elementary school. Didn't want you to get that wrong on your homework. I like to call these words adverbs in disguise. They just don't seem like adverbs. I tell students to memorize these. I think that's the easiest way to recognize them. We also have the category of comparative adverbs. Remember, this is comparing two items or people or animals. We have more and less. The superlative adverbs, most and least, are modifying when you're comparing three or more. So 3 or more items or people or animals. I have 2 examples here. Beth eats fruit more frequently than veggies. We have item number 1 and item number 2. So of course I use the adverb more. Frequently is also an adverb. Frequently is modifying eats, and more is modifying frequently. You could double underline eats if you would like. That is the verb phrase. The second sentence says, Brian eats pizza the least often within his family. So Brian is object 1 or people number 1, and family would mean 2 or more people. So we have our verb, eats. Brian eats pizza the least often, okay? Least often is modifying the verb eats. Often. Often is modifying eats. And then least is modifying often. To what extent? The least. Okay. Take a second, scroll down to the next one. I just like to clarify this for students. Adverbs are not verbs. So even when a short adverb like also, never, or not interrupts a verb phrase, it does not become part of the verb. So I give you some examples down here. Frank would also like to pack would like a pack of new socks. We have would and like as my verb. Frank is my subject. Notice my adverb in the middle. So the adverb does not become part of the verb phrase. Number 2, Julie will never eat tuna or broccoli again. We have Julie as my subject. I have will eat as my verb phrase. And notice my adverb never, one of the negatives, interrupting the verb phrase in the middle of it. Last but not least, we have Cheryl has not started her research essay. My apologies, I forgot to write a period at the end of the sentence. You can add that in. Cheryl is my subject. Has started is my verb phrase. And my adverb, not negative, okay, is modifying has started. So if you were diagramming it, it would be, I would draw the arrows like this. I should have done that from the beginning. Let me go in and clarify that. So the arrows are modifying both parts of the verb to show that it does in fact modify both. Remember, you can pause this as you're taking notes, or you need to go backwards or forwards. That takes us to the end of our lesson. This is on adverbs. Your homework will address everything that is in this presentation. So please let me know if you have questions or if you would like to go over examples. And that wraps up our adverb lesson. Thanks so much, guys.